So I wrote an article I want to talk about a little bit, and this is something. If you're an Alaskan who has anything or any input on where this should, what we can do about this, or what warnings, or what you wish someone would have done for us. This came in yesterday when I was on the air, and I just couldn't do it. The Gulf oil spill, boat captain, despondent over spill, commits suicide. William Allen Cruz, 55, a charter boat captain recently hired by PP as a, quote, vessel of opportunity out of Gulf Shores, Alabama, died Wednesday morning before 7:30 a.m. of a gunshot wound to his head, likely self-inflicted, according to the authorities. Stan Vinson, coroner for Baldwin County, which includes Gulf Shores, had said about Mr. Cruz he had been quite despondent about the oil crisis. Cruz, who lived with his family in nearby Foley, Alabama, reported to work Wednesday morning as usual at the Gulf Shores Marina on Fort Morgan Road in Gulf Shores, Vinson said. He met up with his two deckhands at his boat. His boat was called the Rookie. One of the deckhands later told Vinson that Cruz seemed his usual self, sending them to fetch ice while he pulled the boat around to the gas pump. As the deckhands walked off to get the ice, they heard a sound like a firecracker, Vinson said. Then they turned around but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. So they proceeded to gather the ice and wait for Cruz at the pumps. He never showed, Vinson said. After waiting a while, the deckhands returned to the boat, which was moored where they had left it, and they went on board and found Cruz at the captain's bridge, above the wheelhouse. He'd been shot in the head. A Glock handgun was later recovered from the scene, and investigators do not suspect foul play. Vincent said Cruz was in good health. He did not suffer from any mental illness, and he was not taking any psychotropic medications. But he said it's not surprising the oil spill had weighed heavily on his mind, as it has many local fishermen no longer able to support themselves with deep-sea sport fishing trips like marlin and the like. All the waters are now closed. There's no charter business anymore. You got on some of the beaches now with oil, you can't even get in the water. It's really crippling the tourism and fishing industry here. Vincent's office was to perform an autopsy Wednesday. The Gulf Shores Police Department is still investigating. Cruz's family was notified by Wednesday afternoon. His deckhands were sent home for the day. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is Shannyn Moore, The Shannyn Moore Show. 569-1080, the number here, 907-569-1080. So I basically sat here on the break with wet eyes after reading that article to you from someone, a fisherman, not just someone. His name was William Allen Krause. Looks like, actually it's Cruz, Kruse, William Allen Cruz, 55 years old. You know, the captain of his own ship. Worked really hard for that. Worked very hard to be the captain of his own ship. And then having to work for a company who destroyed his life just so he could try to pay his bills. And the despondent and horrible wave that comes with that, where you have to get into bed with something so dirty just to survive. There have been 11. There were 11 men killed on the platform when it exploded, but this is no less a victim of the oil spill, of the hemorrhage at the bottom of the Gulf. In Alaska, we had dozens of suicides. Dozens and dozens. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday who said, I know of 30. And it didn't all happen the first day. It happens when the cameras go away and people forget. And people are like, oh yeah, didn't that get cleaned up? So what? Yeah, but they got that all cleaned up. I saw the tapes. saw them, they all had white suits. Remember Saturday Night Live had that thing where they're, you were washing the little rocks and got moved up to the big rocks? That was hilarious. It was so funny. I remember seeing that. It's fine, right? I've been warning in writing the Gulf. The suicides will be coming. You have to take care of each other. This is going to get really, and I got emails yesterday from people who said, I thought you were being dramatic. I thought you were just being kind of like dramatic about, and when things happen, it's like when people sit around and tell war stories, and it's always a, tougher battle than it probably really was. And maybe someone did run someone out over their shoulders and save their life, but it probably wasn't 10 miles, it was probably 1. Right? Like it was some sort of old war story that I was glorifying. Or sensationalizing, I should say, maybe, what happened here. It wasn't. I posted at my own website, shannonmoore.com, and at themudflats.net, a piece and talked about Bob Van Brocklin, who was the mayor of Cordova during the spill. And on Thursday, May 20th, 1993, he wrote this suicide letter. This is part of what he wrote. The stress from Exxon, which brought about my financial stress, was way too much to deal with alone. The end should be good, and maybe my spirit will live. I have a lot of fear right now, but faith is all that I have left. I wish I could have done more for others, but I guess my time is up. See, he had sat in the Cordova High School 4 days after the Exxon spill. This was May 20th that he killed himself, four years later. But 4 days after the Exxon spill, he sat in the high school gym with everybody else in town, angry people, all waiting and wanting to know what was Exxon going to do. The families, the fishermen, the local businesses. See, they're the same sort of people that are going to meetings in the Gulf. It's just geography that's different. It's the same people. Same people that worked really, really, really hard for a life that they're proud of. And it's not that they're afraid to work. It's not that they're lazy. See, Don Cornett had been sent by Exxon to talk to local fishermen. Mr. Cornett, I don't know if he knew he was lying to the mayor Van Brocklin or to the guy who had just mortgaged his house to buy a herring permit, who was looking forward to teaching his son how to fish, or some 13-year-old girl who had just gotten a nanny job because, that's what she could do, be a mother's helper while the fishermen were out. I don't know if he thought he was telling them the truth, or if he was just a paid BSer. I don't know. But this is what he said that day. He said, I'm here to tell you what we are going to do about the oil spill. I'm going to show you what we are going to do about it. And we are doing the best job that has ever been done on an oil spill. And watch, just watch. You have had some good luck, and you don't realize it. You have Exxon, and we do business straight. He said, we will consider whatever it takes to keep you whole. You have my word on that. Don Cornett, I told you that. It's sort of like, the small people. We haven't forgotten about the small people. You're so lucky. You have had some good luck and you don't realize it. You have Exxon, and we do business straight. You know, Cordova never had a need before the Exxon spill to open up a domestic violence shelter where the domestic violence rates in coastal Alaska went through the roof, and not on the first day, not on day 67. It was over years and years and years and years. All the bankruptcies, my God, the divorces, the divorce rate went through the ceiling because of the stress of finances and bankruptcy and alcoholism and people who have a nature to be their own boss, to be the captain of their ship, to be the skipper in their own life. That when they go out, when you leave the harbor and you've got salt water on your face and you've got corks piled on one side and you've got leads on the other and you are on your way out there, it's up to you. You better be a damn good fisherman. You better hope that the weather holds, and you better hope that if you need any help, your brothers and sisters on the ocean will help you, because they do. But it's about building this life that's yours. And to have that taken away and have that eroded to the personality that says, yeah, I'm going to take on the Bering Sea. I'm going to take on the Gulf of Alaska. I'm going to take on the Gulf of Mexico. I've been in 40-foot seas. I've had my windows knocked out of my boat. What do you got? Oh, really? You sit in a cubicle? You're working on your TPS reports and worrying about your stapler? That's your life? Really? Your life as a fisherman, your life as taking people out fishing, whether you're a charter boat or you're commercial, whatever it is, that's a big, big world. That is such a big world. And I'm talking about this now because, not to be a prophet, I don't want to be right about this stuff. It's not about who's saying it. This is just how it is. This is a lesson we learned, and we can't let it be wasted. We cannot let this be wasted. Because even though Don Cornette is whole, I assure you, he's fine. I checked. Bob Van Brocklin isn't. Hasn't been since 93. What it takes for you to blow your own head off is a lot. And I've had suicide in my own family, and it's just not a legacy anybody wants to leave, especially someone who is who is strong and independent and has made this world. And my pops always said, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I can agree with him. I mean, it is. And he's had it cross his path more times than anyone should have to deal with. But what's happening in the Gulf right now doesn't seem temporary. It doesn't seem to have an end in sight. It does not seem to have a solution. It doesn't seem to have anyone stepping up to say, there is going to be an end to this. I don't know that the president understands what happens to people. But we do. And he should be responding to this part of the human crisis right now, because it's invisible. The despair and the hope and all of this is invisible. It's just there. And in the meantime, there are bottlenose dolphins washing in to shore, and there are turtles burning alive in these corrals of oil that are being burnt. These turtles are coming to the top and being burnt, and there are fish just boiling in the water to the top and dying because they don't have any oxygen in the water. And there's birds covered with oil, and you can see all of this in tar balls washing in, and the marshes and the swamps and all of this. It's so visible, and the pictures are so devastating to look at. And if you look at them long enough, you can smell dispersants in your own mind. You can just, it's horrible to look at, but it's all visual. But the despair that people are feeling is invisible. And yet it is just as corrosive, if not more so, if you can even say that. There's some comments, and I know people are reading these over at the Mudflats right now and at shannonmoore.com. And, last year, I actually, a couple years ago, I wrote an article about a soldier who was from Soldotna, who was killed in Afghanistan. And I wrote in there, I just read this young man's name, and I don't know what team he cheered for. I don't know what he ordered on pizza. I don't know who he was. He was 21 years old and killed. And I said, every time I read one of these names, I want to know those answers. I want to know who this was. This has to be real. It can't just be a name. Every single name, whether it's William Allen Cruz, who killed himself yesterday over despair of the spill, or it's a soldier who's coming back, every single one of these names, somebody picked out. Somebody had a baby, and they picked out a name, and they named him after somebody, or after a character in a book, or a song that they loved, or a hero of theirs, or they just liked the name and they looked it up in the book of 5,000 names and it didn't mean something horrible and doesn't rhyme with something that someone's going to tease them with on the school bus. Every one of these names are real, right? So it's a year and a half after I wrote this about this young man, I get an email from his fiance, and she answered all those questions. And she told me what he ordered on his pizza. And she answered all these questions, and she said, I haven't even been able to Google his name, but I read the comments from people who read your article, who poured out this sorrow. And she said, a sorrow that I couldn't even read yet, but now that I am, and I am healing, these words have meant everything to me. So I'm only talking about this because I don't want it to happen again.
She looked across the blackened sound, broken-hearted at what she found. Her home, her family, everything she knew had been covered in the black and crude. She said, ooh. Thoughts she tried to pace. What was the future and how could she raise a family on what used to be? She said, ooh. Visions of dying daughters, fish and birds filled her mind, and the cries she heard. Oiled bodies and tortured souls, corporate profits had taken their toll. She said, ooh.